Alright, ladies and gentlemen, going to make a quick video here. So, I'm still been slowly but surely plinking away at the various different the various different gearing options that you can do, why they work, why they don't work, who synergizes with what, so forth and so on while you're leveling. And since I finally got the stats on Spirit, I figured I could actually sit down and figure it out, not just for Paladin, but for pretty much all classes in general. So that brings us to this over here today, which is what we're going to be talking about. So the TLDR here is that some of the stats synergize very well while you're leveling in under certain conditions, whether you're AoE farming or you're 1v1 leveling, meaning you're killing like one mob at a time. Maybe there's a 1v2 every now and then, but generally it's like one mob at a time, which is what I would consider to be like questing. When you're questing, you're usually killing one mob at a time, trying to avoid the 1v2. And then when you're grinding, you're usually, you're either very efficiently killing one mob at a time, or you're trying to grind and trying to AoE grind in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so let's start with the conclusions here real fast. So conclusion number one is if you can blow up the mobs at range using mana before they get to you, that should be a they and not then, before they get to you. So that would be your Ellie Shamans while leveling, your mages, single target mages, your Destro Locks, your Boomkins, your Shockadins, which is something I made a video about recently, but I need to actually go playtest it in game. Your Shadow Priests, they can do a lot of they can convert a lot of mana into damage very quickly, and they don't get punched in the dick too terribly hard while doing it. Then of the Owl gear is best for 1v1 leveling. Of the Owl gear is gear that has intellect and spirit on it. You're going to see that there is a very strong synergy between stamina, intellect, and spirit for classes that can burst, if that makes any sense. This changes somewhat for the AoE, but we'll continue on down here. If you're a physical damage dealer, so that would be your rogues, your warriors, and your ret paladins, and I suppose to a lesser extent kitty cat druids and so forth and so on, but they got like at least a mana bar to play with. Strength, stamina, spirit is best in 1v1 mob leveling. You don't really AoE with that kind of build anyways, so I mean, 1v1 leveling is your thing. Enough stamina to fight 1v2 if you're needed, and 1v3 when you have your CDs on cooldown. The reason why this is important is because one of the major downtimes while you're leveling as a strength build is going to be those oh shit moments where you actually have to run away for your life, and just having a bit more stamina, and God help you if you get killed, right? That makes it even worse. But from an XP per hour perspective, just being able to have enough stamina to stand there and fight it out rather than running away is usually better. But if you got to run, you got to run. You can very easily correct this with proper pulling technique using rough dynamite or something like that. That thing where there's like a pack of 3 mobs and you throw the dynamite out there, so you damage all 3 of them simultaneously. They all start running at you. And you can they're not chain aggroed anymore, so you can very easily pull one of them away. So if you start melee attacking one of them and just backing up, like literally just backing up your character, because you might not know this, but the aggro, how to get a mob to stop chasing you is not based on the distance you run away from them. Some of it is based on the distance that you're running away from them, but a lot of it isn't. It's purely based on time. So they're going to chase you for a very set period of time. And if you stop moving and you allow them to start physically attacking you in melee, that'll reset their time. What this means is that if you run away away from them at full speed, you'll be doing that for 10 seconds, and you'll cover God knows how much distance in 10 seconds. It's actually going to be 80 yards, but the fact that I know that bothers me. I PvP too much is what I'm saying. However, if you're backpedaling while doing this, the same rules apply. They're only going to chase you for 10 seconds one way or the other. So you'll cover less than half the distance. You have to run away a lot less far, only about 40 yards or so, while backpedaling. And the mobs will turn around and run away. But anyways, if you're hitting that one mob, you can pull them out from a pack, but by all means. It's called split pulling. Look it up. I'm trying to keep this video somewhat short. All right, but yeah, so you have some synergy with stamina. Let's get out of this real fast here. There we go. You have some synergy with stamina, is what I'm trying to say, as a physical damage dealer. But most of your synergy is going to come from spirit. Some people would argue that you want to stack agility for critical strike, especially if you're like a warrior or a ret paladin, or you want to try to get your hands on some gear that has some critical strike chance. So, for example, if you're a ret paladin or you're a warrior, the ornate mithril gear set that blacksmiths can use. It comes with strength and 1% crit, strength 1% crit, strength 1% crit on like all 4 or 5 pieces or something stupid like that might be really good. What you're going to find is actually just stacking spirit is actually a really, really good alternative, if not competitive, if not objectively superior to trying to find crit from inefficient sources. So, for example, if you're a ret paladin or you're a warrior, it's going to be 20 points of agility in order to get 1% crit. That is an inefficient use of your resources. You're better off going spirit. If you're a rogue, and I do believe this also goes for a hunter, the situation is completely different because you double dip from the agility, so stacking agility becomes your best bet. So, for example, the rogues and the hunters, they usually will go agility, spirit, and the warriors will go strength, spirit, strength, spirit. The ret paladins are also highly encouraged to go strength, spirit, but I'll cover that when we get to spirit. And you might think, oh, ret paladin synergizes really well with critical strike. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, go try it. Seriously, go. Just shut up. Go test it. You'll see exactly what I mean. But when I start talking about spirit, we'll get into there. Okay. Spirit is usually greater than agility or crit because it reduces downtime, which is the #1 DPS killer of strength gearing. The problem with gearing for strength gear and getting DPS from strength is that when you are not in combat, your strength gear is completely, absolutely worthless. Spirit gear is suffering from the same thing. When you're in combat, your spirit gear is effectively worthless because you don't have a mana bar, right? It's also one of the reasons why it's even more effective on a paladin. However, to compensate for this, when you're out of combat, your health regeneration from spirit is increased significantly if you're a warrior or a rogue because you don't have a mana bar. And more importantly, when you're sitting down to eat, that health regeneration from spirit is increased by 50%. Not the mana regeneration, just the health regeneration. So if you've ever seen some like speed running, leveling guides for warrior, for example, they are very heavy into their spirit gearing. They would be going strength, spirit, which I think is wolf gear. Or is that gorilla? No, gorilla gear is intellect, whatever. It's strength, spirit gear, and with some stamina mixed in, just in case things get ugly or RNG doesn't go their way. All right, AoE farming. There's only really 2 AoE farming paladins classes in the entire game. That is Paladin and Mage. Mage is stamina, intellect, gear, as you probably know, and it's just all the way to the end. If you're really trying to squeeze out efficiency, you're going to have a spirit gear set that you swap to while you're drinking. But you primarily do that for large pulls. Smaller pulls for mages is that you're going to be doing stamina, intellect. And you're just going to be pulling enough mobs to where you can kill them and you have enough mana left over that you can just gather another pack and kill them again before you have to drink. That's not super efficient, though, for a number of reasons. So mages are usually just stuck trying to gather as many mobs as they can and then burn them down and then drink, mobs, drink, mobs, drink, mobs, drink. They don't really have I'm going to pull a smaller group and be more efficient about it option, even though I wish they did. Paladins are a completely different story because of how consecration works. So, for example, if you hold back on your consecration for 1 second, you will get an additional tick of spirit regeneration in between consecrations, which means that paladins are essentially so inefficient at they don't have a spell that they can use constantly to AoE like a mage can. So it becomes more and more viable for them to have some spirit gear mixed in. And since they're getting punched in the dick a lot, it becomes, and since they have a harder time gathering up mobs, it becomes more and more efficient for them to do a smaller mob pull rather than a bigger mob pull. What this basically means is that if you're doing big mob pulls as a paladin, you want stamina, intellect gear, but there's kind of a limit. So, for example, if you're pulling 5 mobs at a time, it's advisable that you have all stamina intellect gear except for like 4 pieces of your gear, which are of the whale, which is stamina spirit gear. If you're going for smaller mob pulls, like 4 mob pulls, or like three, or the double 3 mob pull. If you don't know what the hell the double 3 mob pull is, you pull a pack of 3 mobs, which is very easy to do. You burn them down, then you drink to till you have just enough mana to go pull another pack of 3 mobs. You burn them down, and then you stop and you drink to full. What that usually looks like is it usually costs you 2/3 of your mana bar to do that. So it'll be 2/3 of your mana bar to pull 3 mobs, and you drink back up to 2/3 of mana bar, jump up again, rinse and repeat. In that case, when you're going 3 mob pulls, you're using even less stamina intellect gear, and you're using more and more spirit gear. And more specifically, of the owl gear becomes absolutely amazing because you don't need all that stamina all of a sudden. So just double dipping with of the owl gear, which is really, really hard to find in plate, but it's very easy to find in cloaks, rings, and the neck piece, the stuff that mages like to use. Because if they can't find stamina intellect gear, the mage's next best bet is of the owl gear. But yeah, of the owl gear starts getting really, really good. Okay, so those are the conclusions. Let's talk about why the hell things are the way that they are. All right, let's start with strength. You'll notice that there's not a lot to say about strength, but there's a lot to say about intellect, spirit, and stamina. That's because there is a very large degree of synergy between stamina, spirit, and intellect. There's not a lot of synergy between strength and just about anything else. Okay. So 7 points of strength will gain you 1 attack power worth of DPS. It'll increase your attack power, DPS by 1. However, once you start factoring in armor, that'll go down to about 0.6 DPS. So 70 strength is going to give you like 6.2 DPS. God help us all. Now, you can come at me with, like, some of the redheads like to come at me with, oh, what about parry haste? What about critical strike chance? What about vengeance uptime? What about this? What about that? You know, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but they don't talk to me about miss, dodge, block, and parry. But they really want to talk to me about crit and parry haste and all the other benefits that they get from strength. The simple fact of the matter is that strength, while you are leveling, has been designed as a stat to synergize with classes in World of Warcraft as if they were geared 60s, meaning that you have all your talent trees available and you have all the best gear available in the game. Classic WoW was very smart in doing this, because if they didn't do this, the strength stat could easily go off the rails because there's too many multipliers being involved here, right? Parry haste is a huge multiplier. Critical strike is a huge multiplier. You start getting certain talents and talent trees, that's a huge multiplier. What I'm saying is that strength looks different as a fully geared 60 as a stat, as the value of the stat looks significantly different than it does while you're leveling and you can't find any critical strike gear to save your life. Parry doesn't exist outside of the damn talent tree. And goddamn, are you missing and being block, dodge, and parried all the damn time, right? So while you're leveling, strength is not the most amazing stat in the game. It is perfectly viable and it's definitely needed. Like, so for example, if you are a warrior, for example, you're just going to want strength, stamina, spirit, strength, stamina, spirit, strength, stamina, spirit. Would you turn your nose up at one of those over the other? Strength and spirit for you are going to be about equal in their they have a synergy together, because the faster you kill the target, the faster your spirit can start doing its damn job. However, if you're in nothing but spirit gear, you'll kill the target slower, but your recovery time will be virtually non-existent. You won't have to. You basically want. You barely have to eat ever. Going from mob to mob to mob, even though you're killing them slower, because your spirit gear is just. It's like you're eating and drinking, just running from mob to mob. It's actually legitimately terrifying if you've never seen it. And of course, stamina is just there to let the other two do their damn job. There's not a lot of synergy going on. strength synergy is between you and your class's based abilities and its talents. It's not synergizing with other stats very well at all, is what I'm basically trying to say. And its overall value increases over time as you get closer to 60 and as your gear gets better and better and better optimized. In the lower level, strength is absolutely terrible. But as you get around about level 40 or so, and your full toolkit starts coming online, it gets better and better. All right, let's move on. Stamina, as I have it stated here, absolutely needed for basically all classes, otherwise you die. But DPS wise, it only really synergizes with Spirit. And more importantly, it only synergizes with Spirit for mana users. It doesn't really synergize too well with Spirit for the strength users. So, for example, if you were a warrior and you had nothing but strength spirit gear, strength spirit gear, strength spirit gear, and you had just enough stamina that you could go from easily fight, one mob to one mob to one mob, you would be loving life. Just because you've minimized the amount of stamina that you need, and you've maximized the amount of strength and spirit that you have on your gear. And there is synergy between spirit and strength, even though it's not the biggest thing in the world. Okay, let's talk about int, and you can't talk about int without talking about spirit. So 1 point of int is worth 15 points of mana, and its DPS calculation gets very interesting and very nuanced because it's linked to both how quickly you can turn your mana into killing mobs, and it's linked to the quality of the water that you have. So I'm going to do a hypothetical to try to explain this real fast, even though this video is getting a little long. So let's say I'm level 45. I've got some brand new water. I know off the top of my head that level 45 water will increase it'll give me 97 mana per tick. If I factor in like spirit regeneration on top of that, let's just say that we've got like 120 mana a second regeneration while we are not in combat, while we're not trying to blow up mobs or anything like that, right? Now let's say maybe the hypothetical is a waste of time, and I can just explain it more directly to you guys. Yeah, the hypothetical might just be a waste of time. All right, scrap the hypothetical idea. But what I'm trying to say here is that the faster you can turn your mana bar into DPS in the mob and get back to drinking again, if you could convert that at a near 1-to-1 ratio, meaning the sheer act of drinking causes us to do like 120 DPS to that mob over there, to that mob or that mob over there without aggroing them, you'd be leveling super quickly. This is why a single target mage leveling is actually so fast. It's because they can blow up mobs really quickly and then basically drink for free. Blow up mobs, drink, blow up mobs, drink, blow up mobs, drink. So for example, I have an example here. So let's say you kill 2 mobs and it takes you 10 seconds to kill each mobs because you nuked the crap out of them. You're either an elemental shaman or you're a mage or you're a Destrolock, and then you spend 30 seconds drinking. You're going to have a 20-second mob kill time, which is really, really, really good in Classic World of Warcraft. The TLDR in Classic WoW is if you're killing mobs under 30 seconds, you're doing good. If you're killing them in under 25 seconds, you're doing really good. If you're killing them around about 20 seconds, give or take, when you factor in everything like the recovery time, how long it took you to fight them, gathering up the mobs, yada, 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 you're basically the fastest leveler in the entire game. The AoE farmers, the time it takes them to kill a mob is usually around about 20 seconds, give or take. So you can see that us blowing up mobs and then just look at this. We're spending. Oh, did I do that wrong? Oh yeah, no, I did that wrong. This should be 50 seconds divided by 2. This should be 25-second kill times. My bad. Because I got to add that we're killing 2 mobs, right? So this would be 25-second kill times, which is still really, really good. So we spent 20 seconds killing mobs, and we spent 30 seconds drinking. We're spending most of our life drinking, but it doesn't matter because we're so efficient at converting mana into DPS that it's not that big of a deal in the world. We end up getting very good kill times at 20-second mob kill times. Why is the mana important for this? Well, if we had less intellect and we had more spirit, for example, we would have less drink time, but we might not have the mana bar to blow up 2 mobs before we drink. So the next thing we know, we're wasting a bunch of water, which could be a gold sink issue, or just a time issue in general. So if you were doing single target mobs, you would basically want to have a mana bar so that you could blow up 2 mobs before you need to drink, because blowing up 1 mob before you need to drink isn't the best thing in the world, if that makes any sense. Also, you're wasting a lot of the drink, and there's also a spirit tick regeneration issue here, which we'll talk about when we talk about spirit. Let's talk about spirit. So spirit is giving you, for every 8 points, every point of spirit is giving you a quarter. That's a terrible way to think about it. Every 8 points of spirit is giving you 1 point of mana regeneration per second. Okay, so it's for 4 spirit points, you're getting 1 mana per tick, but it ticks every 2 seconds. So by the time you go up to 8 spirit, you'll be getting, while spirit regeneration is in effect, you'll be regenerating 1 mana per second. To give you an idea of how powerful this is, you have to compare it to something like MP5 or Seal of, or Blessing of Wisdom. So, for example, let's say you have Blessing of Wisdom, which most people consider to be one of the best blessings while you're leveling in the entire game. Better than Might, better than Kings, better than just about anything else unless you're doing AoE farming. Let's say Wisdom level 40, not even level 40. Wisdom level, like, 36, somewhere around there. It's giving you 20 mana per 5 seconds. Okay, cool. Well, that's 4 mana a second. That's the equivalent of 32 spirit. Like that. But that's if spirit was in a constant regeneration state, which of course it never is. But you can examine your life cycle. Like, what does your rotation look like? How much spirit regeneration are we actually getting? Blah, 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 blah. So rather than it being 32 spirit, it's going to look closer to something like, 40 spirit in order to get the same effect. Well, what this means from a paladin perspective is that when I look at my rotation and how much downtime I have, and I can literally go over here. I think I still have the thing up here. Right. So this is the Holy Shock Paladin, which uses a mix of whale and owl gear. And you can see we have a very strange rotation of like Shock, Judgment of the Crusader, Seal of Righteousness, Rank 3, Consecration, and then 21 seconds of dead time while we let spirit tick regeneration happen, and then we finish off the mob with a Judgment of Righteousness and a Hammer of Wrath. So we're basically front loading. If you were a shaman, this would look like, lightning bolt, earth shock, beat the crap out of them for 21 seconds, and then end the fight with a earth shock or something like that. It's called front loading. Basically, you take your mana and you turn it into as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible, and then you just stop damaging the target and you start auto-attacking it to death. You possibly even finish it off with auto attacks, and that's just to maximize spirit tick regeneration as possible, and that gives you the most efficiency out of any spirit gear that you possibly have, or your base spirit regeneration as possible. If you're able to maintain a rotation like that, spirit regeneration becomes extremely valuable and useful. Some of the classes have talents and abilities that will synergize with spirit. So, for example, druids in melee, I think, have something that synergizes with spirit. I know that shadow priests have something in their talent tree, I think, synergizes with spirit, where it's like, 30% of your spirit tick regeneration continues while you're casting. If you don't know how spirit ticks work, it's when you cast a spell for the next 5 seconds, you'll get no spirit tick regeneration, and then after those 5 seconds, you need to wait another 2 seconds before your spirit ticks start happening every 2 seconds, which means you're not getting any spirit tick regeneration for 7 seconds after you cast a damn spell, meaning you have to sit around and twiddle your thumbs for 7 seconds before you even get a single spirit tick regeneration, and then past that, you really don't want to cast any more spells to get more spirit tick regenerations. Consecration is probably the best example of spirit tick regeneration I can give you in the entire game. So Consecration has an 8-second cooldown, which instant cast, which means when I cast it, If I spam Consecration, I'll be casting it every 8 seconds, which means I'll get 1 Spirit Tick regeneration at the 7-second mark, and then I'll cast it again at the 8-second mark over and over and over again. If, however, I wait 1 second on my Consecration, so I instead cast Consecration every 9 seconds rather than casting it every 8 seconds, which is as fast as I can possibly do it, I'll at least have waited around for that second tick of Spirit regeneration before the Consecration goes back out again. You follow me on this? So the best way to make use of Spirit Gear is to, no matter how you look at it, is to front load the crap out of your spells, to basically blast on your enemy with as much mana and spell damage as you can, and then to basically melee or wand them to death for long periods of time before blowing them up again and drinking or just wanding them to death and letting Spirit Regeneration do its damn job. The way this looks like for mages, of course, is because their water is free, is that they're just going to blow the crap out of the mob as quickly as possible and then drink, and Spirit Regeneration is in play for them essentially while they're drinking, right? However, for Elemental Shaman and for Paladin, for example, and then this also works for, we got a long list here. No, we don't have a long list. Shadow Priest is also here. Druid is also here because Druids can front load a bunch of spells and either blow them up and drink, or go into bear form and just beat them to death while their mana is regenerating through Spirit. Anyways, let's talk about Spirit. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that the performance of Spirit from a DPS perspective, from a leveling efficiency perspective, will vary greatly based upon your class and what the hell you're doing with it. But it is an amazing thing to use while leveling 110,000%. The point I was trying to make with the Paladin is that when you have Spirit Gear on a Paladin, eventually you get to the point where it becomes pointless for you to have Blessing of Wisdom up on yourself anymore, and you get to start using Blessing of Might. And once you make that transition, it's actually very, very powerful, because Blessing of Might is worth an absolute shit ton of attack power while you're leveling. You'll be like level 30, and you'll get like 85 attack power, which is the equivalent of like, what is that, like 42 points of strength effectively. And I essentially only have to get something like 40 points of Spirit before my Spirit Regeneration is high enough that I can put on my Blessing of Might and then and convert it just straight into DPS, which is pretty fascinating. Or I can, if I have the mana capability, the ability to turn mana into damage, like a Holy Shock build, I just keep Wisdom on because it's still doing work for you. So, for example, just give you an idea of what the hell is going on around here. This Holy Shock build was a level 42 experimental, and I calculated that Blessing of Wisdom within one of these rotations was giving me. I was calculating that despite the fact that I'm using as much mana as I possibly can to kill the mob as quickly as possible while respecting Spirit Tick regeneration, the total mana expenditure was about 1150. But I was regenerating damn near 500 mana from Spirit Tick regeneration alone, and Blessing of Wisdom, by contrast, was only giving me like 150 mana. But yeah, I totaled that all out, and that's like 531. That's such a massive mana reduction on this cost that it ends up being worth it. We're getting like 25-second mob kills here, which is really, really good. And it's just a different, unique play style for Paladin. You know, it makes it more fun and exciting and yada, yada, yada. Okay, cool. Let's move on here. So I got it here. It's like 0.65 DPS gains from Spirit Regeneration compared to Strength being, 0.625, but that's if we're not factoring in any of the negatives to Strength gearing or any of the positives to Strength gearing, because it's very, very nuanced, and you get a lot more out of it based upon your class skills and your talents than anything else. But the same is true for Spirit, right? Obviously. 0.65 DPS if you're getting a 1-to-1 manage to damage ratio and 12-second stop in a 30-second window, which is basically what the hell do I mean by a 12-second stop in a 30-second window? That would be like a Paladin running up and judging seals or shocking for damage or consecrating, and then you have that very long window of downtime where you're letting spirit tick regeneration happen, and then finishing off the mob with some spell cast. That's what it would look like for a paladin. And that means that in the total combat time of whatever, we casted twice, which means that we're accepting at least 10 seconds worth of spirit tick regeneration interruption, and that extra 2 seconds is give or take for an additional spell cast, which will put you on a GCD of 1.5 seconds, blah, 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 right? That would be, if that was an elemental shaman, that would be like, lightning bolt, chain lightning, earth shock, and then physically attacking the mob until it dies, right? You've accepted some downtime within your duration to your spirit tick regeneration. So it's just we're more accurately calculating the percentage of spirit tick up time. So if I go over here and I pull up a calculator really fast and I take 12 divided by 30, no, that wouldn't be what it would be. It would be, no, that's correct, 12 divided by 30, yeah, 12-second downtime within a 30-second window. That would mean we had 60%. That was cool. The percent button does that. I didn't know that. We had this 12-second stop time within a 30-second window means we have 60% spirit uptime. If we had 100% spirit uptime, and we were able to convert our mana into a 1-to-1 damage mana to damage ratio, then this DPS, it would be 8 points of spirit equals 1 DPS. So this might be wrong at 0.65. I think I calculated it a little bit more in Spirit's favor because most spells in the game are a little bit better than a 1-to-1 mana ratio, but it actually should be 0.6 now that I'm doing the math more properly on this. DPS gains vary with many factors, but more downtime equals better. That's one of the odd things about Spirit, is that more downtime equals better. And it's usually even better if you can combine it with drinking, even though counterintuitively you might think to yourself, I'm going to put on spirit gear so that I don't have to drink, and because I don't have to drink I save money, therefore I can have better gearing options while leveling, and therefore I do more damage. Counterintuitively, you're usually far better off blowing the crap out of the mobs as quickly as possible and drinking as much as possible. But it varies based upon on class. Like some classes can get away with that, some classes can't get away with that. So, for example, the Elemental Shaman was doing really, really good if he's wearing stamina, intellect gear, blowing the crap out of mobs and drinking, blowing the crap out of mobs and drinking. Same thing with mages, yada yada yada. Plays well mixed into burst and drink gameplay. Yeah, I'm just talking about that right now. But it also plays really well into what's known as front-loading gameplay, which is that Holy Shock / Elemental Shaman build that we just talked about. Druids do the same thing, right? Dot up the target. Literally, I think a Druid's is to open with a Starfire. Starfire? Not Starfire. Is it Starfire? The big channeled arcane one that has a chance to stun the target if it's spec'd into, and then you dot up the target, you go into a bear and you beat the crap out of them. Spirit gear, absolutely amazing for that. But it's important to realize that there is a very strong synergy between stamina, intellect, and spirit. Stamina means you don't have to heal yourself very often, which means you get more spirit tick regenerations. Intellect just lets you blow the crap out of more mobs before you have to drink. You get the idea. Pure spirit builds are perfectly viable. Like if you're doing nothing but spirit, perfectly viable. The downside to this, you might think it's a really good idea to go nothing but spirit gear. And you're not wrong, but the major downside to this is that you're literally gearing your character to not take advantage of how powerful eating and drinking is in the game. When the easiest solution to taking advantage of how powerful eating and drinking is in the game while leveling is to find the nearest mage and turn them upside down for their gamer girl drinking water. Okay, you get where I'm going with this, right? You find the nearest mage, you give them like 10, 15 silver, and they will literally give you a full inventory of mage water so you can just drink to your heart's content while leveling. The easiest way to do this, of course, is to start your day out with running a dungeon and to make sure that the group that you're in while running a dungeon has a mage, and just make that mage give you a full inventory of drinking water for free to help you go through the dungeon, and then when you're done with the dungeon, you go level out in the open world. That's usually how I do it to keep the cost down. But again, like when you're level 45, that's 97 mana regeneration while per second while drinking. Um, yes, you're not DPSing anything while drinking, but if you can convert the mana you're getting drinking into pure DPS in the target, you're basically not wasting your time while drinking. And so very rapidly it becomes counterintuitive to try to gear with as much spirit as possible so that we never have to drink. It's like, but drinking is a massive DPS advantage for you. And just look at the intellect stamina build and mage leveling, where they basically blow up like three mobs and then they spend like 45 seconds drinking, and then they blow up three mobs and they spend 45 seconds drinking, and then one of the fastest levelers in the game without a lick of spirit on their gear. Why? Because that's how powerful drinking is when you can convert it into damage on a mob as quickly as possible. Okay, we clear with that? All right, well, I'm going to end the video here, and Deus Volt, boys, and good luck leveling.